So we know function overloading is a concept that talks about or that involves reusing the same name of the function multiple number of the times. That is what the word or the meaning overloading actually means. You are overloading. You have already defined the function once, and now you are redefining it more than once. That is what over and the loading means. Loading means you are providing a definition once, and overloading means you are providing a definition with the same function name multiple number of the times. Now there could be a debate whether this concept is good or bad, but the concept is fine as long as you want to keep the same function name, because sometimes the programmer get confused by writing multiple number of the function names with varied names. So if you are one of those programmer who does not want to write multiple names of the function within a same program, then function overloading is a good concept wherein you can use the same function name multiple number of times. But each redefinition of functions should have different number of parameters, type of parameters, or sequence of parameters. So this is a necessary and sufficient condition for the function overloading to take place. Either number of parameters should be different, or the type of parameters should be different, or the sequence of parameters. So number of parameters means one function can have two parameters, another function with the same name can have four parameters. Then type and sequence of parameter, we can have a character and an integer, and the other function can have the integer and the character. That's fine. That function gets overloaded. Or you can have character and the integer, or character, integer, and the float. So it depends upon the programmer how he would like to utilize or exploit the concept of the function overloading in a program. So let us scroll down this program and see the function overloading. How does it take place in C sharp? Because the function overloading was there in C++, it was there in Java, and the same concept get carried forward in the C sharp also. So we define a class program, and we call the name of the function as a sum. Now here we see it receives two parameters. Both of them are the integer type. So int x comma int y, and it adds the value of these two integer variables. So return x plus y. Then we redefine the same function, but this time with the more number of parameters. So in the first definition, the sum function was having only two parameters, both integer type. And here also we are using integer type, but the number of parameters has got increased from 2 to 3. So it's a sum function, simple function. It just does the addition part. So again, return x plus y plus z. So it will return when it will be called, when the sum function will be called, the x, y, and z will receive the values, and we are going to add them up and then going to return them. Then we again go for the redefinition of the same function by the name sum, but this time what we do, we have a combination of two different data types. One is double and one is a integer. So double x comma int y, and since it will receive a double as a parameter, return type also goes as a double. And then we say again return x plus y. So we have defined the function sum three times, each with with each redefinition certain changes have been there in the parameters. One is receiving two parameters, one is receiving three parameters, one is receiving different type of the parameters with the different data types. And all of them are have been declared as static, so I can directly make a call to those function without instantiating the class, without declaring the object of a class. So all these have been defined. Now we go for the definition of main function. So static void main string args. Now point we need to remember is that the m of the main function will always be in the uppercase, and the s of the string will always be in the lowercase. This is especially required to keep in mind when you are doing C sharp after you have done Java programming language, because there we know the main m of the main goes in the lowercase and the s of the string goes in the uppercase. Now what we do, we make a call to this function, sum function, three times, and since it is already declared as a static, and we know when the function is declared as a static, then you can make a call to the function directly by its name, and you don't have to instantiate a class, you don't need to get an object of a class, and there is no need to make a call to that function with the help of the object. So binding is not required because the function have already been declared as a static in nature. So we make a call to some function once with a value 8 and minus 1, once with a value 8 and minus 1 and 0. So this will return us 7. This will also return as 7, and then this will return us 4.3. So double and the integer. And then we can display the values, the integer double, console.writeLine. Once what we receive the value num1, we print the value of num1, then we print the value of num2, and then we print the value of num3. So three functions are there. So we'll get the values something like 7, 7, and 4.3 after the addition has been successfully done. And then we can exit from the program. Right now we can go and compile the program. The program is very simple. The basic objective is to understand the concept of function overloading. Overloading means you define the function once and you use the same function name multiple number of the times. Now again, obviously there's a debatable part whether it's a good or a bad, but the concept is being offered by a programming language. Now it is up to the programmer to decide whether he would like to use this concept or not. But programming language provide multiple flexibility. They don't worry whether you exploit that particular feature or not. So we always say any programming language is as good as the programmer. So it is up to the programmer to decide whether he would like to use this particular concept in his implementation in the project development. It is completely up to the programmer. So we can run the program. So we can see at the bottom when the build started. So it might take few seconds. And then we can see the output on the console window, 7, 7, and 4.3. So in this way, we can perform the task of the function overloading using the same function name multiple number of times. Only thing we need to remember that the number of parameters, type and parameters, and sequence of parameters should be different. They cannot be same, because if they are same, then it is not function overloading and it will give the compilation error. If you're using the same function a multiple number of the times with the same sequence, that's so it will create a problem for us. Better one of the parameters should be changed, or the sequence of parameters should be changed, or the data type of the parameter should be changed, so as to ensure that the function overloading takes place in a proper manner. Now we move on and we discuss the concept of the inheritance in C#. Now inheritance, we know it's a very simple concept. The word itself says you have a base class, and from the base class you go and you inherit the derived class. So the concept was there in C++, the concept was there in Java, and same concept is being carried forward in the C#. Now what is the main objective of carrying it out? It gives me the flexibility to deal with multiple number of the classes, and all these classes are linked with each other. So I will have the base class, I will define some functionality in the base class, and then I can create a new class which will from the base class itself, and it will take away certain properties from the base class. Now which all member variables and member function it can inherit? Only those which have been declared as either public or as a protected. So private content of a base class cannot be inherited by the derived class. Now what did the C++ did? They provided the concept of the friend function and the friend classes. So if there are two classes A and B, and if class B become a friend of the class A, then right at the last line of the definition of class A, we used to write that line friend class B, wherein we give the privileges and permission to the class B to go and access the private content or the private member variables or private member function of the class A. So using friend classes and friend function, even private contents were able to get accessed across the classes. But what thereafter both Java and C# has stopped using the friend classes and friend functions. None of them provide the support for them. And in inheritance, you have to take a decision what all need to be given to the derived classes. So whatever as a creator of the program, as a creator of the base class, if you want certain member variables and the member function to be accessible, to be inherited by the derived class, then you have to declare them as the public or the protected. Or if you don't want to declare them that way, just make them as a private. So they will not be directly accessible. So protected is an access specifier that only comes when we talk of inheritance. Otherwise, protected does not make sense. There are only two basic access specifier, public and private. So 0 and 1. Private means I do not want to share my content with anyone. So everything is private to me, very personal to me. Public means I have thrown it open to all. Anyone can access the member variables or member functions. So we'll have private and the public access specifiers. Protected comes only during the process of inheritance, when we are inheriting a derived class from a base class. Now, C++ provided a support for both the single inheritance and the multiple inheritance, whereas Java and C# provides a support only for single inheritance. They do not provide a support for the multiple inheritance, because there was a problem with the multiple inheritance which many of us have seen in C++, that via the multiple paths, the base class member variable and the base class member function were getting accessed by the subsequent derived classes. So C++ resolved this problem with the help of these pure virtual function and the virtual base classes. And this is how they overcome this problem of the multiple inheritance. So when a base class member get inherited via the multiple paths to the derived classes, now derived classes have a problem that from which path they should go and access the content of the super base class, the super classes. So how do we resolve the problem? By using the virtual base classes, virtual functions, and pure virtual function. Again, if you remember the definition of pure virtual function, it was all initialized to 0. So Java and C# have completely eliminated the concept of the multiple inheritance because they did not want to carry forward the ambiguities or the problems of the C++. So they provide a better alternative by the name of the interfaces. And we do not say interfaces are substitute of multiple inheritance. No, that's not the thing. They are far, far superior, far, far better alternative as compared to the multiple inheritance. But yes, why did the interfaces come? That concept should be clear in our mind. The C++ had a problem wherein derived classes were getting the access to the base class content through the multiple path. And they provided a solution, means they realized this problem, and that is why they provide a solution by the name of the virtual base classes, virtual function, pure virtual function. But then somewhere this problem has to be eliminated. So when Java came into being and thereafter C#, they totally did away with this. So just like the friend classes and friend functions are not supported by Java and C#, same way Java and C# also do not support the multiple inheritance. They only say we'll do a single inheritance and we will not at all go into the multiple inheritance. But they have provided a better, superior alternative by the name of the interfaces. So we'll see what interfaces are and how to declare or define a program with the help of the interfaces. Let us see about the single inheritance first. So we can see here we have got a class, vehicle class, which is our base class, or we say it's a parent class. So everything will start from this base class. Now we can declare the content as private, which will be confined to the boundaries of this class. Or if I want to make sure that the derived class also access it, then it is advisable I declare the content as public in nature or protected in nature, so the derived class can access it. So I say public string brand is equal to Maruti. So this is a vehicle class. We declare a public variable with the name brand called as Maruti. Then we define a function called city of manufacturing. So public void city of manufacturing. Let's correct the, yeah, city of many spelling correction, city of manufacturing. Then we display the, we all know maximum number of the cars from the Maruti are rolled out from the Gurgaon plant, the Manesar plant. So we say console.writeline city of manufacturing for the Maruti is Gurgaon. And then we close down the class. So the way a class is there, a variable is there, a function is there, and a function just displays the city where the vehicle is getting manufactured. Now this class is a base class. If I use a keyword called sealed, then I will stop the inheritance of this class. Just like we got a final in the case of Java, same way we got a sealed. Sealed means you have blocked. Now you cannot allow the inheritance of this class to take place. However, if I do not use the sealed, then I am allowing the inheritance to occur. Alternatively, what could have done, you just write a keyword called sealed, and this will block the inheritance to take place, because as a programmer you have specified to the compiler that this class is completely full-fledged in itself. It is a container like class and it cannot be further inherited. But since we want inheritance to take place, so we remove the sealed keyword. All right. Now we go to the class called car, and we inherit it from the class called vehicle. So we have to use the colon here, and this is our derived class, or what we say the child class, which is inheriting from the base class called vehicle. Now it also defines a variable. We call it as a model name, and let's say the name of the model is Wagon R, which is one of the model rolled out by Maruti. It's the brand name, and we define a function called number of gears. How many number of gears are there in this particular model? So it's a public void number of gears and console.writeline, and within parentheses within quotes 5. So there are 5 gears within this particular model of the brand called Maruti. So we close down the number of gears function and close down the car function. So till now we have got two classes. One is a base class, one is a derived class. Both of them have got their own member functions and they have got their own member variables also. But all of them have been declared as public in nature, so easily they can be accessed. Now we go to the third class called as program. And what we do here, we instantiate the derived class. So we come to the main function, we come to the definition of main function, the body of the main function. And what we do here, we go and instantiate the derived class, which is a car, which is this one, right? So it's a class name, a reference variable, which is car object is equal to new. New is an operator which we are already familiar with. It's used for dynamic allocation of the memory. Then again the name of the class. So we instantiate the class, and with the help of it, now the car object is a reference variable which is available to us. With the help of it, now we can make a call to the member function of base class as well as the member function of the derived classes. So what we do here, we say a reference variable car object dot number of gears. So we make a function call to the function of the derived class, and then we make a call to the member function of the base class also. So car object dot number of gears and car object dot city of manufacturing, and then we can display the same thing back to the user. Console dot writeline car object dot brand plus car object dot model name, because both of them are easily accessible, the brand name as well as the model name. The member variable of the base class can be accessed by the reference variable of the derived class. And then console.read key just to hold the command prompt window. So it's a very small simple program that talks how the inheritance takes place. And one thing which you will be very sure of once you have done in Java, it only supports single inheritance. We do not allow the multiple inheritance to occur. Another takeaway from this program, if I do not want inheritance to take place, I need to declare the class as sealed class. Just like we got a final class in Java, same way we got a sealed class in C#, and that will stop the inheritance to occur. However, if you want the inheritance to occur, go ahead and use a keyword called column. So class name, then the name of the derived class, colon, and the name of the base class. This will allow the inheritance to take place. And now the public content and the protected content of the base class will be inherited by the derived class. So both the member variable as well as the member functions. And that is what we do by defining a third class called program. We come to the main function, instantiate the derived class, and after instantiation we get a reference variable called car object, and using the car object we make a call to the member functions of the base class as well as a derived class, that is city of manufacturing and the number of gears. Also we can make a call to the member variables, so that is the brand name and the model name, and both of them are accessed and their values are displayed in the main function of the class program. So let us run the program to see its output. So it will take few seconds depending on your system configuration. Yeah, so we can see here it's 5, the number of gears, the city of manufacturing is Gurgaon, and the brand is Maruti, and the model is WagonR. So that's how the inheritance takes place in C#. So I hope the program and the concept are clear regarding both the function overloading as well as the inheritance. Now, once we discuss and understand the concept of the inheritance, there are few related concepts called abstract class, because abstract class holds good and the concept works successfully only when you have a knowledge of the inheritance. So the first question that comes to our mind is, what is abstract class? Now, abstract word itself means something which is not concrete, means it is an incomplete class, because any class that contains the member variable and the fully defined member function, we say it's a concrete class. But any class where function declaration exists but function definition is missing, we say it's an abstract class. Abstract means incomplete, something is missing in it. That's the essence of the keyword called abstract. And what is that missing component from the abstract class? The function definition. The definition, the code is missing within the function. And since the definition of the function is missing, we do not allow the instantiation of these classes. Means you cannot create the object of the abstract class, for the simple reason that the class contains one or more than one incomplete functions. So there is no limit, there is no upper limit on the number of the incomplete functions within a class. It can have one or more than one incomplete function. Incomplete means the definition of the function is missing. Now, who will provide the definition of this function? Because we are not allowing the instantiation of the class, because the class is incomplete in itself. So what we do, the programming language have the concept wherein they say, now you can go and inherit these classes. So abstract class can be inherited, however, they cannot be instantiated. You cannot create the object or the reference variable of the incomplete class, because what you will do with the reference variable of or the object of the class which is completely incomplete in itself. So what they do, they allow the inheritance to occur so that subsequently down the line, somebody in the derived class will go and provide a definition of the abstract functions. So we allow the inheritance to take place, but we do not allow the instantiation to occur. So we expect that the first duty and the first responsibility of the derived class will be to provide the definition of the abstract function of the base class. I repeat the concept again. What is the first and foremost duty of the derived class? They can define their own concrete function well and good. But first and all, they should always go and provide a definition to the abstract function which they've inherited from the abstract class. If they do not do it, what will happen? The derived class itself will become abstract in nature. So first and foremost duty of the first derived class should be to provide a definition to the abstract function of the base class in the first level. However, let's say in the first level, the first derived class doesn't do it. It defines its own four concrete function, but it does not provide the definition to the abstract function of the base class. Now, what will happen after the code of the derived class is over? Again, we cannot instantiate such a class, but we allow the inheritance to take place. Now, at the second generation, the second level, we'll have a second generation of the derived class. Now, this class will not be able to come to know that there are certain abstract functions left over from the base class, which were unfortunately not defined by the first level or first generation of the derived class. So, for no fault of their own, the second generation of derived class will also become abstract in nature, though it will define complete definition of all the functions. Let us say there are four concrete functions in the first generation of derived class and two concrete functions in the second generation of derived class. Since the first generation of derived class did not provide a definition to the abstract function of the abstract class, the base class, it will become abstract in nature. But what is the fault of the second generation derived class? It has no fault. It cannot directly even access with it because it will not be able to see that are there certain abstract function left over from the base class. It will see that I have got complete definition. There are two functions defined in me, and I provide the definition of that. It will look up to the first generation of the derived class, which is its immediate base class, and it will see all those functions are defined there also. So for no fault, for no reason, second generation of derived class will also become abstract in nature. So the point I am trying to convey is that the first derived class, it's a duty and responsibility of that derived class to make sure that before it goes and define its own concrete function, it should first of all provide a definition to all the abstract function which are declared in its immediate base class so that the problem can be sorted out immediately there, and it should not get mingled with and go on the subsequent derived classes. So that's how the abstract classes function get resolved. That's how the problem get resolved. Let us see the code for it and the properties of it. So these are the properties of the abstract classes. So we use abstract class at the time of inheritance. If you're not doing inheritance, you cannot play with the abstract classes. You must have a knowledge of inheritance, then only you can go for the abstract classes. A user must use the override keyword before the method which is declared as an abstract in the child class. The abstract class is always used to inherit the functions or the method of in the child class. An abstract class cannot be inherited by the structures, so only classes can inherit the abstract class and the structures cannot do them. It can contain the constructors or destructors. It can implement the function with the non-abstract methods also. So the abstract class can contain the abstract function as well as the concrete functions. It cannot support multiple inheritance because that is for sure. Multiple inheritance cannot be supported both in Java and C#, but we have got a better superior alternative by the inheritance. And it cannot be static. So that's some of the properties which you have to keep in mind when we are dealing with the abstract classes. Certain properties, certain features of the abstract class which should be very careful in our.
So here we have got a namespace. Namespace, within the namespace we go and define an abstract class and we give the name as a vehicle. So abstract is a keyword which need to be written before the class definition starts. So class vehicle, and we need to write the abstract keyword. So this class becomes the abstract class. Now, as we have discussed, only declaration part of the function is there and the definition is missing, means the body of the function, the code of the function is missing. So we'll go and define the abstract function, public abstract void, void goes as a return type, and the name of the function which is country of manufacturing. So here this function is abstract in nature, and we don't need to write the curly braces, because if you write something like this, that means the blank body definition exists. Mm, Means the curly braces, moment you write opening and the closing curly brace, that means the blank body definition exists and it is no longer the abstract function. So if the function has to be abstract in nature, the curly braces should not be there, and immediately after parenthesis we should have a semicolon. That means the function declaration gets over. Then abstract class always have a property that it can contain the abstract functions as well as it can contain the concrete functions. Concrete function, we all know they are fully defined functions. A function which have a body inside them, the function where code exists. Now we are not worrying about whether code is correct or not. That we are not concerned. Code should exist. The programmer should have written some lines of code within the curly braces, opening and the closing curly braces. That means the function definition exists. So till line number 17, what is the situation? We have a class called abstract class with the keyword abstract written before the class definition starts. Now we all know abstract class can have both the concrete function as well as the abstract function. And we also say abstract function can only be defined within the abstract class. We cannot define the abstract function within a concrete class. However, abstract class can contain both the abstract function as well as the concrete function. So that's a point we always need to remember when we discuss about the abstract features. Then we come to the derived class name, which is a car, and we are taking the same case study of vehicle. So we say it inherits from the vehicle. The vehicle becomes a base class. Now from the line number 20, what should be the duty of the programmer? That moment he goes and starts the definition of the derived class, its first and foremost responsibility is to go and provide the definition to one or more than one abstract function which has been declared within the base class, right? If the derived class does not do it, then derived class itself will become a abstract class. Why? Because it is inheriting from the base class and there are certain abstract function within the base class which has not been defined either in the base class or in the derived class. So derived class can have its own concrete functions, but it should always provide a definition to the abstract function declared within the base class. That's the first and foremost responsibility of it. And the other property, the abstract class cannot be instantiated. We have discussed the reason. The reason is that abstract class is contained the abstract function. Abstract function means incomplete. They are not fully defined. So there is no point in instantiating a class which contains the incomplete definition of the functions. And that is why instantiation is not allowed. And inheritance is allowed with the hope that yes, the derived class will first go and define the abstract function of the base class. Why I am repeating these points again and again, so that they become settled in our mind, that this is what the funda of the abstract class and the abstract functions is. Now we need to use the keyword here override. Now we have got two keywords, function overloading and function overriding. Function overloading works only when we talk of the single class. When you redefine the same function multiple number of times, but each time the number of parameters, the type of parameters or sequence of parameters has to be different. If you fulfill this criteria, that means you are successfully doing a function overloading in a class. But what if I want to use the same function name across classes in a hierarchical manner? That means we are talking of the overriding. Overriding means there are certain functions within the base class and you want to redefine them within the derived class. That means we are talking of the overriding here. So we say public override, return type, and the name of the function, the abstract function of the base class. And then whatever code I want to write, so I say console.writeline, and within parentheses, within quotes, the name of the country where the vehicle is getting manufactured. And then I close down the definition of the derived class. So derived class here right now it's not containing any concrete function. What the derived class has done, it has provided the definition to the abstract function. Now suppose here I do not use the override keyword, right? Now immediately I can see, if I, let's say if I click on start, it will immediately say there were certain building errors. Would you like to continue and run the last successful build? I say no. And I restore the override keyword. And now again I can, now I can see here, now the red color even line has go up. So it's mandatory for a programmer that when he is providing a definition to the abstract function declared within the base class, he should use the override as a keyword. And then we can go to the class, the third class program, which has got a main function inside it, static void main string args, and we provide, now we cannot instantiate the base class because it is containing the abstract function. However, we can go and instantiate the derived class, which is not containing any abstract function. So car obj is equal to new car, and then we can make a call to the function, both the base class as well as the derived class, city of manufacturing, country of manufacturing, and then the console.read, and then we close down the main function, close down the program and the namespace. So we go and click on the start, and then wait for a few seconds, and then yes, now we can see that the output has come, the city of manufacturing and the country of manufacturing, the way it has been called within a program. So that is the way how we can deal with the abstract classes. First of all, city of manufacturing was called, and then the country of manufacturing was called. So few things which we need to remember. First is we need to use the override keyword. So this is also called method overriding or function overriding. Now, since this function is now not being called by anywhere else, can I define it as private? Now immediately I can see there are certain errors which will pop up, but still I go ahead and click on the start. And it pops the window, the Microsoft Visual Studio. There are certain error. Would you like to continue and run the last successful? I said no. Now the reason being that when we override a function of the base class, it is always advisable that you keep the scope of the function as it is, or you can increase it. But as a programmer, you should not decrease it. So I restore the scope as public, because if you keep it as private, then the problem will come if you further down the line inherit another class from the car class, then the function called country of manufacturing will not be accessible to the second derived class in the hierarchy, because you have blocked the scope in the first generation of the derived class. So I repeat again, the first generation of derived class is car. I go for second generation of derived class, I further inherit a new class from the car class, and if I declare the country of manufacturing function is private, then the country of manufacturing function will not be accessible by the second generation of the derived class. Means a new class which has come out from the car class. So that is why we say when we do for method overriding, the scope of the function should be almost as it is, as it was there in the base class, or it can only be enhanced further, but it should not be decreased down. It should not be further lowered down. For example, if the base class was protected, the function was protected, then the derived class I can make it public. But however, I cannot make it private. Or if the base class function was public, I cannot make it private. I cannot lower down the scope, because then you are blocking the accessibility of that function from the subsequent derived classes. That is something which we have to take care when we go for the abstract classes and the abstract function fundamentals. Another popular question that normally comes in our mind when we go for the abstract class and abstract function, that if the function need to be defined by the derived classes, why don't we define within the base class itself? Because we are defining the function later down the class. So what should be the practical application that where we can use the abstract classes in the abstract function? Now take an example where in a company a project manager is there. and he has a team of 4 to 5 programmers. They're in a SDLC, software development lifecycle, and he's dealing with a project where he himself defines the structure or the schema of the project. That what are going to be different modules, what are going to have different functions within the modules, and he himself gives the name of the functions along with the prototype, the parameter which they are going to receive, and he declares all these functions as abstract in nature. And now he provides the set of all these functions to his programmer, and he says, you do not define any function from your own side, because there will be a greater problem when the entire project gets completed and the work done by the 4 programmers are integrated. Then the project manager will have a problem in the integration. If we give the freedom to all the programmer to define their own functions, because every programmer will define his own function with his own prototypes and different set of parameters, so he might have a problem. So what he will say, you do not do anything. I will define the functions, I will define the return types, I will define the prototype, the parameter they are going to receive, and you just do the coding. So the purpose, the logic should be clear, that what need to be written in which function. So he will just provide a set of function to the programmers. Programmers will do the coding, and then finally when the SDLC is done, he will integrate the project, and he will not have any problem because he himself decided on the nomenclature of the functions. And he knew that module A was having how many abstract function, module B was having how many abstract function, module C was having how many abstract function. So as a software engineering subject teaches us the concept of coupling and cohesion. So as a project manager, I can decide that whether I require a high cohesion and low coupling, or I require high coupling and low cohesion, because I am controlling the project. And this is what normally happens in industry also. So when you join the industry initially in a company, they will not give you the freedom to decide on the structure or the schema of the project. Initially, they will just put you on the coding. So they will test your logic, what is your IQ capability, and how fast you can do the coding. So initially, first or second year of almost every programmer is spent in coding only. The work will be assigned, specs will be given, specification will be given, and then you will be asked to code it. Later on, from third year, as you gradually go up in the industry, you take the role of the team leaders and project manager. Then you have the power and privileges in your hand, that where you can define the project by your own. That what should be the essential component, what should be the essential modules of the project, who will do what kind of coding, how the testing will be done. So you will have a say in the entire working of the project. So that is how the abstract class and abstract function goes on. And I hope the concepts become clear. There should not be any problem. If still exist, you can always approach me, and we can always discuss. That's not a problem at all. Now let's move next, and we talk of the interfaces. That's another very important property provided by the C# and Java as a programming language. So one of the common thing that comes as why we require interfaces. So we say interfaces are needed because Java and C# do not support the multiple inheritance. An interface can contain declaration of methods and the properties. Properties are the same properties or fields or variable, they all mean same thing, and methods and function means the same thing. Interface cannot contain the fields, so there cannot be any declaration of the fields. Interface cannot include the private and the protected members, so every member has to be public so that it can be accessed by the other classes and structures. All the members are public by default, so we do not use any private or protected members within the interface. A class or a structure can implement one or more interface implicitly or explicitly. So both the class and the structure have the power and the privileges to make use of the interfaces. And we'll see how to do it in a program. And interfaces supports the concept of the inheritance. So an interface can inherit from one or more than one interfaces. So these are some of the prime properties of the interfaces which we need to keep in our mind when we are doing the program or the coding for the interface. First thing important, all the members should be public by default. Second, they cannot contain the fields. Third, yes, an interface supports inheritance, so it can inherit from one or more than one interfaces. And the other important point, a class or a structure can implement one or more than one interfaces, either implicitly or explicitly. So that's one of few of the very important properties of the interfaces. And why interfaces? Because both Java and C# does not support the multiple inheritance, so they provide with a better concept called as the interfaces. Now, let us see the program for the interfaces. How do we go and define them? So this is how we go for the interfaces. So we carry on with the same vehicle case study, and we define the namespace, and the line number 9 we define the interface. That's the first interface. Interface is a keyword. It has to be written as it is in the lower case, and then you give the name of the interface as per your choice. Now here the important thing, we cannot declare the variables. So fields cannot be declared within the interfaces. So I can't define, or I can't declare a variable like public string brand is equal to the Maruti, because field declaration is not allowed to be done within the interfaces. Now here explicitly the method will be public by default. So you don't need to write public keyword explicitly. And anyway, private and protected are not allowed to be declared within the interface. So we go and define the first interface by the name first interface only. And then we, from the line number 15, we go and define the second interface by the name second interface only. So both of them are having the functions. The functions are abstract in nature, but we do not use the abstract keyword. Abstract keyword is abstract functions are declared only within the abstract classes. So we make use of the abstract keyword with the abstract function only within the abstract class. When the interface, we do not use the keyword abstract, because it is assumed by default that the function declaration is existing and the definition is missing, right? So we go and define the second interface again with the name city of manufacturing, and no function definition exists. So only here we have defined two interfaces. The name of the interface of first interface, which is containing an abstract function called country of manufacturing, and the second interface, which is containing another abstract function called the city of manufacturing. But though the functions are abstract in nature, but we do not explicitly specify with the help of the abstract keyword. Now that is something which we need to remember, the difference between the interfaces and the abstract function. Abstract class contain abstract functions, and abstract functions are only declared within the abstract classes. Abstract functions are those functions which have got only declaration part and the definition is missing. And to call them as an abstract function, we use a keyword called abstract with them. Then only they become the abstract in nature. Abstract class cannot be instantiated, whereas they can be inherited. How many number of times they can be inherited? No upper limit on it. They can be inherited as long as in the entire hierarchy no function is abstract in nature. So inheritance is allowed in the abstract classes and the abstract function concept, but we do not allow the instantiation to be get done. In the interfaces, we say we can only declare the abstract function, but the functions do not use the abstract keyword. That's the first thing we need to remember. And we cannot declare the variables within the interfaces. Interfaces can be inherited. So you can have an inheritance successfully running across the interface. And the class can implement one interface or more than one interface. One interface or multiple number of the interfaces. So we come to the class car in the line number 19, and it implements the first and the second interface. The first interface comma the second interface. And since it is a concrete class, it can declare a variables. So we declare a variable by the name model name of the type string. Let's say with the keyword or the name of the car as WagonR. Then we go and define the functions, the country of manufacturing and the city of manufacturing, because both of them were the abstract function declared within the interface. And we know class is implementing an interface. So the functions of the interface are now available and they are accessible within a class. So we write a small line of code in each of these functions, the country of manufacturing and the city of manufacturing. And the class also contains its own concrete function called the number of gears. So let's say 5. So now what is this scope and what is the structure of this class? It is implementing two interfaces and it is providing a definition to the abstract functions which has been declared within the interfaces. It is providing a definition to them. Again, you see here, we are not using override keyword, which we have used when we talk of the abstract class and the abstract function. But here, while providing a definition to the abstract function of the interface, we do not use the override keyword. And it defines a concrete function called the number of gears with, let's say, with the value 5. And then we close down the class. And then we define another class which has got a main function inside it. And now we can go and instantiate the class and make a call to all the three functions, the number of gears, the city of manufacturing, and the country of manufacturing. So in this entire program, we have got two classes and two interfaces. One class is only containing the main function. The other class is implementing the remaining two interfaces, the first interface and the second interface. Implementation means you are providing a definition to the abstract function which have been declared in the interfaces. And though we do not use the abstract keyword, we don't use the override keyword. So that's the thing which we need to remember while doing a program using the abstract class and the abstract function and doing a program using the interfaces so that we don't commit a mistake. And then now we can start the program to see the output of it. So we can see the number of gears as 5, the city of manufacturing as Gurgaon, and the country of manufacturing as India in the output of the program. So that is how we deal with the interfaces. Now we'll keep till this point only, and in the subsequent class we discuss about the exception handling as well as the file handling, how we can go and declare them and define them in the C#.NET.